In this episode of Crypto Over Coffee, we're talking about how 0.008 Bitcoin and owning that amount is actually a big deal. Now, I hear a lot of people talk about how frustrating it is. Bitcoin is just costs too much. I can't afford one Bitcoin. You hear a lot of stuff online about how you should own 6.25 Bitcoin or one whole Bitcoin and striving for that. I get it, but let me put your mind at ease and walk you through the math about why owning even what you would think to be a small amount of Bitcoin is actually a big deal. So make sure you hit subscribe, follow me on the podcast platform of your choosing, and let's get started. So before I started recording this video, I did a little bit of scratch napkin math. So if you see me looking down at this, it's because remembering numbers is hard. If it's not hard for you, you're lucky. That's awesome. So I'll be referring to those notes. But let's talk about Bitcoin in general and why people talk about certain denominations of Bitcoin and certain amounts that you should own to reach some sort of goal. Now, we all know there are 21 million Bitcoin that will ever be created. This is a protocol enforced fixed limit. Okay, people will say online, Bitcoin critics will say it's arbitrary, it's easy to create new Bitcoin supply. It's not. You have thousands and thousands of nodes and independent individuals and coalitions enforcing those protocol rules defined in the code that Satoshi Nakamoto created originally. And it's that protocol that enforces the 21 million supply cap. And to meaningfully change that would be extremely difficult, and it is secured by economic incentive. It doesn't make sense for miners, for holders, for participants in the Bitcoin network to devalue the currency that they own, correct? So we can just move that aside right now. That's not a reasonable argument to be making here in terms of the Bitcoin supply. It drives me crazy when people talk about that. Please understand Bitcoin before you make that criticism. So there's 21 million Bitcoin that will ever be owned. Now, there is an estimate out there, and this is a conservative estimate, that around 3.7 million of that Bitcoin that is in circulation right now is lost and unrecoverable, or unlikely to be recovered. So that actually leaves, out of that 21 million supply cap, approximately 17.3 million BTC units left over. Not all of Bitcoin that will be available is in circulation yet. We still have till, I think, our estimated 2140 before all of the Bitcoin that will exist is going to exist. And a big part of that is the halving. So we're about to go through a halving. I have a whole video about that, which I will link in the description of this video and of this podcast if you'd like to listen to that one, what the halving is, what it means. Halving is what drives a reduction in inflation, and that is the main mechanism by which new Bitcoin, or BTC, is released into circulation up to the fixed cap. And this is verifiable very easily if you look at the Bitcoin Core code. It's very simply placed in the code. You can check it out yourself if you'd like. So we're about to go through a halving. Each block, there will be 3.125 Bitcoin released into circulation, and eventually in 2140, there will be 21 million Bitcoin released into circulation, and that is the maximum number that there will be. A lot of people say, oh, well, owning one whole Bitcoin is going to put you in the upper echelons of future society. And that may be, but one Bitcoin is, at the time of recording this video, around 70,000 US dollars. And considering how fast the market moves, it may be below that or above that. I can't film videos every single day. That's not the way my life works. I film in between my kids' naps, okay? So, or during my kids' naps. But people say you should own one Bitcoin, and others say that's just demotivating for them because there's no way that they'll ever be able to afford to own one Bitcoin, okay? Fair. So then the new one was, okay, well, why don't you just own that small iteration of sort of the 0.0000001% of the Bitcoin supply. Own 0.21 Bitcoin. Okay, I mean, that's maybe a little more reasonable, but still a lot of money. It's still more money than most people are able to allocate to an investment that if they lose, it's really impactful to their life. And so that, again, is also demotivating. Okay, we've gotten over the single unit bias of saying, oh, you should own one whole Bitcoin. You can own a fraction of one, but what about a smaller fraction than 0.21? People get sort of stuck in this mindset that owning a small amount of Bitcoin doesn't mean anything. But if you're looking at it from a long time horizon, I'm here to tell you that it does. So let me walk you through the math of the scale behind this. And in the headline of the video, I said 0.008 BTC actually is a big deal. In my belief, it is. And we'll also talk about that 0.21 BTC number because there's an actual reason for that. Okay. So let's talk about that smallest value of Bitcoin, or smallest amount of Bitcoin first. Okay. So let's just say, based on the assumptions, we have 8 billion people on Earth. That's billion with a B. We have 21 million Bitcoin minus about 3.7 million based on Bitcoin that are lost or unrecoverable. They don't really factor into the supply equation here because no one can get those units. So that means, let's just say a conservative, in the fullness of time, 100 years from now, 50 years from now, whatever it might be, a conservative 1/4 of the Earth's population has interest in having some exposure to Bitcoin. I'm not saying everyone wants one Bitcoin because we know that can't happen, but let's say, just for the sake of argument, 2 billion people on Earth want access to Bitcoin. What does that mean? It means that of that 17.3 million Bitcoin units that will be available, each person of that 2 billion will only be able to get 0.008 Bitcoin, all else being equal. And that's not even factoring people who already own more than that, who will never sell it. So the reality is that number is far less. So if you own 0.008 Bitcoin today, which is pretty accessible overall, may not be able to do it all at once. I think it's about $600-700 worth right now, if my mental math is correct, based on the current value of Bitcoin. That's US dollars, by the way. I think that's attainable for a lot of people, even if they have to chip away at it over the course of several months or over a year. And that seemingly small amount is consequential, considering the scarcity of the asset involved. Now, people are going to say, well, what about gold? Gold is scarce. Gold is precious. And a lot of people own gold. That's not really making a meaningful impact on their life. And that's true. But there's a big difference between gold and Bitcoin. And you're starting to see institutions, like Larry Fink from BlackRock, probably the biggest entity you can think of, starting to talk about this difference. Bitcoin is provably scarce. You can easily verify not only the number of units in circulation today, but the maximum number of units that will ever exist no matter what happens, right? And that is both mathematically provable, but also from the perspective of the evolution of technology provable, right? Whereas with gold, we don't really know how much gold there is just on Earth alone, let alone in the far reaches of space. And so there is an uncertainty. I'm not going to say it's a guarantee that there's, more or less than we think there is, but there's a degree of uncertainty, unverifiability of the supply of gold. That's one aspect of it, the scarcity. It's really easy for us to think about the supply and demand curve when we talk about Bitcoin. But let's say you don't believe that 2 billion people would actually really care about Bitcoin. Let's just say population continues to grow like it has been. But you know what? Only 1% of the world ever really cares about Bitcoin. And I think personally that it's going to be way more than 1% of the world. In fact, I think 1% of the world already has interest in Bitcoin, but we'll just play devil's advocate for a moment. Let's say that 80 million people really want access to Bitcoin. Okay, let's just say that. Let's say that. So if that's the case, that means that each of those people would need to own 0.21 Bitcoin to be sort of above average in that equation. Now, again, we know that there are plenty of people who own Bitcoin supply that are never going to part with it. And that means that 0.21 Bitcoin may not be attainable for all those people in general. And so again, it's like every way you slice it, if you believe, and this is the key, right? This is the key assumption. If you believe that the demand for Bitcoin is going to continue to grow over time, say in the time scale of 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 years, then mathematics will tell you that owning even what seems to be on paper today, a small fraction of one Bitcoin unit, is actually a big deal in the grand scheme of the supply and demand graph. You will have, if you hold 0.008 BTC, more BTC than most people can actually own, assuming demand of, say, 1.5 to 2 billion people. You will be in that top bracket of people who own Bitcoin in that juncture. So my point here is not owning 0.008 Bitcoin is going to make you a rich, sort of the wealthiest person in the world. I read something on Reddit years and years and years and years ago at the beginning of my Bitcoin journey, I guess you could call it, that has become more prevalent, sort of circled back again today. And it's people coming up with different permutations of this same phrase. And it's, you don't buy Bitcoin to be rich. You buy Bitcoin to not be poor, right? And the point is not, again, if you buy Bitcoin, nothing bad can happen to you financially. That's not the case. As you know, Bitcoin doesn't always go up. It goes down and whatever. But in the fullness of time, over the long time scale, Bitcoin has done nothing but go up. And I believe it will continue to do that based on the data and the facts that we've talked about here. But what that really, that phrase is really saying is that it is pointing to Bitcoin's usefulness and value as a store of value over the long term, the protection against fiat currency debasement and rampant inflation and other things that are completely outside of your control as an individual. And so you've seen the demand for Bitcoin ETFs, these products that are really giving exposure to institutions and really sophisticated investors around the world, but a lot of what's going on right now is in the US. The reason why these entities are buying it is as a hedge against these uncertainties in global economies to which they belong. They're allocating single-digit percentages, and they're eventually, in my opinion, going to allocate more than single-digit percentages of their portfolio to protect themselves from these things that are out of their control. And so that's what that statement is really all about. Buying Bitcoin to get rich, I think, is a foolish thing. It's a foolish reason to go into Bitcoin. And honestly, it's a foolish reason to get into this space around decentralized technologies in general. But if you buy into it on that ethos and you think about it, especially for Bitcoin, based on this mathematics that we talked about here, and you think about the fact that even a fraction of one Bitcoin in your ownership is meaningful in the grand scale of how much is available and the scarcity of that asset over time. If you think about it in the scale of the number of people that you think may have demand for it in the future, in this eventuality, I think it's really meaningful. So I wanted to share this video with you. I know it was more philosophical than normal, but I think a really valuable thought experiment. I'd like to hear what you think in the comments below. What is the magic number for you in terms of Bitcoin? Have you achieved your Bitcoin ownership goals if you have one? Or on the other side of it, do you think that this whole Bitcoin thing isn't working out and you're not interested? Tell me why in the comments. Really interested to hear your thoughts. So want to thank you very much for watching this video. Thank you very much. Hope you and your family have a great rest of your week. And until next time, cheers.